They told you it's a war on terror. They manipulated the American public to make it think it's about safety, borders, and religion. But it's actually simpler than that. It's about money, fear, making you feel like you're tiny and you can't do nothing about it. This skull right here didn't randomly just become a bad neighborhood. I was born in the 90s. My generation grew up in the happy 90s, just a slow life that transitioned quick. We entered the 2000s and grew up on wars, the war in Iraq, 9/11, economic crashes, and social media, and a boom in technology. And some stories of kids that went to school and never came back. You take a kid and you feed them chaos their whole life, and you feed them with fear and manipulation. Not because he was broken, because the environment around him turned his brain into a little war zone. To try to program that generation to numbness and to feel insignificant. I'm one of those kids, a Yemeni American. I was born in America. I left here after our father passed to go back home and learn the language and cultures, and then came back to spend the rest of my time in America. My eyes have become a hybrid lens in seeing the ugly and beautiful in both sides of the ocean. Today, I want to walk you through that bad neighborhood in my head. Not to impress you or make you feel sympathetic, but to educate you and show you how a false flag shaped us all. Welcome to the Bazzi podcast, episode 8, The False Flag. Actually, I have somewhere special to take you. I grew up in Staten Island. This skyline, this water, this memorial, this is my backyard. These names behind me are not conspiracies. These are real people. Families, jokes, daily routines, favorite songs. Not a lot of people came back home that day. The smoke was real, the pain was real, and the fear was real. So what does this have to do with false flags? For people my age, this was an opening scene. It was a beginning of something catastrophic to the nation, to people, nationalities, religions, a type of division. It was a real tragedy. And it followed with a story that said, the enemy looks like you, Abbas. This story went on to justify war, spying, and generational fear, and what this false flag put upon me as a Muslim American. I'm not here to disrespect the memorial. I actually respect it. I just refuse to let these people's pain and suffering be used for a blank check. And also for the lies that came after. I'm Abbas, a Yemeni-American Muslim, decal guy, car guy, auto styling guy, overthinker. I'm not a journalist or a professor. I'm just literally the dude that wraps cars and drives this tiny van and thinks of the bullshit that we live in and trying to make sense of it. I was born here actually in America, and I grew up in Yemen as well. I spent part of my life here and a part of my life in Yemen. So my eyes had that perfect hybrid perspective, where I was able to see different views, different part of the world, how people observed each other, and actually compare it to TV and news, and how each other is presented, how America is presented in the media over there, and how the Middle East is presented in this media. Between these two angles, I've noticed there's a lot of lies. A lot. This episode is not me giving out the truth or like here's the solution to geopolitics. It's just me kind of giving you a perspective how, or telling you how fear can be weaponized and how false flag narratives can be manipulated to control people's perspective. A lot of these elites' goal is to make you tiny and overwhelm you with false news and a lot of lies to make you feel insignificant and that you're a drop in a big ocean that won't make any difference. So whether you talk or you don't, it doesn't make any difference. Which is what I refuse to believe in. No, you're not just a drop in the ocean. A drop is what makes the ocean. Every single drop makes a whole ocean. Without a drop, the ocean won't exist. If this works, I want you to leave with one thought. My heart matters. My thoughts matters. My voice matters. Let's start simple. What is a false flag? False flag is when somebody does something really dirty and blames somebody else for it to justify a reaction that they already wanted. This is not a tic-tac term that was just invented. A lot of governments have this thing written down to the T. They really understand it and know how to manipulate it. To give you examples, Operation Northwood, that happened in the 60s. Some military planners proposed the idea to set an attack pretty much on Americans and then blame Cuba and use fear to justify war. But it was rejected. But the document is real. Another event, the Gulf of Tonkin. Americans were told that they were attacked twice by Vietnam. They did attack them the first time, but the second one wasn't really exactly what they described. They added some meat to it to serve it to the American people, which started a full-scale war, as well as the USS Liberty incident that happened in the 60s, but unfortunately it's trending now. It was an event that occurred and they buried it so deep. But the truth always resurfaced. In June of 1967, the Israelis attacked an American naval ship, causing 34 Americans dead and 170 people injured, to justify and hype the Six-Day War. Then you have the Iraq War. Weapons of mass destruction, fear, cranked to the max. And at the end of that war, no WMDs. Close to 1 million Iraqis got killed. A lot of soldiers, they went in to kick ass and got there and just didn't understand what was the whole thing about. It just didn't make sense, but they were just being American. They were trying to serve their country. Came back with traumas. A lot of them became drug addicts and abused by the system after they used them up. And that whole region destabilized. So when I say false flag, I'm not saying that every tragedy was fake. I'm saying there's a pattern. Event, fear, story, war, for control. And unfortunately, the people who really pay the price are never the ones to write the speeches. Growing up as a Muslim in the early 2000s, I could remember the shift in the air after 9/11. Overnight, the mosques felt suspicious. My parents' accents felt suspicious. Our food, our culture, and so on. It felt like it got pulled into like a big magnifying glass in cold terror. Looking back, I can see how they used fear and energized it, bringing out that American, nationalism and anger, really. People were upset and angry. They were bombarded with pictures of Arabs and explosions and different things. Islam became a villain overnight, like the villains from the movie. That's what I mean when I say false flag. They manipulate fear and can turn it to any emotion. The event was real and the loss was real. But the idea was developed on top of an objective and weaponized it to whoever wanted at that time. The ones that benefited from these losses and pain and fear. Overnight, the target looked like me growing up. Any Muslim. Any Muslim neighbor that dressed a certain way or looked a certain way was automatically labeled. I'm glad America got by that chapter. Fast forward today, and again, it gets re-triggered. The trauma. The same false flag that gets thrown on that region of the world. Gaza is being bombed again. Kids under the rubble. Parents screaming. Whole blocks, and pretty much the whole strip was demolished, erased pretty much. Nothing left. Suddenly, I felt like it was happening all over again. I'm glued to the phone, seeing all these events, barely sleeping. It pretty much took a lot out of me, and it changed a lot in me. And again, people that look like me suffer in real time. And I'm thinking, how is this normal? How is the world okay with this? How is this happening again? You know, you pay the price, but no knowledge gained from it. I felt like that chapter is to lose a lot of Palestinians and then nothing gained after, you know, no knowledge. And everybody dies. It's happening again. Are they going to believe it? Here we go again. Another Middle Eastern mission of justice or democracy. And at that time, my heart had the right to be hurt. But the problem is my vision got narrowed. Seeing the world through one tube. The oppressors versus the oppressed. Us versus them. I almost let anger hijack me. Anger is like gasoline. It can move a car. But it can put a car in flames if it spills everywhere. It didn't make any sense for it to happen all over again. The Muslims. I knew something was wrong. And it's like, how can you present it to where you truly see what the problem was? I felt like that anger was a trap. That's what the elites want. They want you to look at a wound and miss out on the whole body. In the midst of all that, there's a book fair in my son's school. My son is running around looking through books. I want this, Daddy, I want this. I'm going to pick a book, pick what you like. And right at the corner, there was this kid. That looked distressed. You know that look that kids make when they're trying so hard not to cry. So I walked up to him and I'm like, hey buddy, what's the matter? Did you get a book? Did you pick a book yet? He's like, yeah. You know that, yeah, just to kind of get you by. So you can, it's like, leave me alone. I said, no, really, what's the matter? You okay? The kid broke. He started crying. And he said, I don't have any money. That truly broke me. And that moment just, I don't know, I get my head up and I look around. Most of the kids are walking around just looking at books, didn't have money to buy a book. So I had my rent money that day. I took it out and I spoke to the book fair earlier. I'm like, just give everybody a book. And not to show off or be a hero. I don't, that feeling of having a kid walking out and being deprived of a book. Isn't that like the simplest thing a child can ask for? Imagine a child asking for life. In the moment, something broke inside of me. Not just for Gaza, not just for that kid. The Gaza war had taken over my field of vision. And I had the right to be devastated. But I only saw the issue from one single view. I would say those kids at the book fair really pulled out the camera and gave me a wider view. I realized the same type of politician, money, and neglect that abandoned the children of Gaza also abandoned that kid. Different scales, different intensities, but it's the same disease. Kids under the rubble, kids crying over books. I'm not saying it's equal suffering. I would never say that. I'm saying it's the same system, failing children in different ways. In that moment, I also understood, if I let pure anger run my brain, I'll miss the fact the whole planet is limping. East, West, Gaza, Staten Island, black, white, Arab, Jewish, Christian, or Muslim. We're all the same. We all pump the same color of blood. This isn't about one group of people suffering. This is about fear, power, and neglect, and how it's breaking us all. And if you think it's just a Middle East issue, no. Let's talk about the shadow powers here at home. Look at something like Epstein, a man connected to billionaires, politicians, and royalty. They all kind of knew that something horrifying was happening. The case, the whispers, the files that everybody keeps talking about. Even the courts are pushing for transparency. But nothing's coming up. This list is like the most protected document in American history. The full network, the full story. It starts to feel like there's a double justice system, or a double America. But one overcomes the other. One for the normal American, and the other one is for the billionaires, rich and connected. Then look at lobby groups. The most embarrassing element of the American structure. Something that started for a good cause and is ending for self-benefit for individuals. And I'm not talking about your Jewish neighbor that wants to live in peace. I'm talking about huge lobbies like AIPAC, the weapons manufacturer, oil companies, and big pharma. All of them who can really pour so much money into the political system, flood our politicians and make them live, a very wealthy life, and shape the United States policy more than actual citizens can. When foreign lobbies and billionaires have more say in America than the actual citizen. That's a big problem. Call it APAC, call it the weapons lobby, call it whoever. But if your money is louder than my vote, that's a betrayal of the idea and ideals of this country. And I need to say this clearly. I'm not anti-Christian or anti-Semitic or anti-American. I'm against the idea of any group of elites, domestic or foreign, should be able to buy more voices than the people who live and die here. Sometimes I sit and think, at what time did America go wrong? And what did the life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness turn into? Sit down and shut up and let the rich guys and foreign lobbies make the decisions for you? Make the decisions of your future? To be fully controlled by money and outside influence is like a spit in the face. It hurts even more because I love the idea of this place. I'm tired of seeing this nation being fooled. They push it so far that it wobbles on the edge of collapse, time after time. And not because the American people are evil, but because the souls got rented out to the ones who give out the biggest checks. What would the founding fathers think? Did you know when they actually sat together and structured the Constitution, they kept in mind Islam as an example of a religion that, if it comes to this land, how would it implement its rights? And they structured it as that. Did you know that the first country to actually recognize the United States of America was a Muslim country? Morocco. We went from day oneers to internal enemy. How did that happen? I'm pretty sure the Muslims at that time saw it. They're like, okay, this is a new form of justice, of democracy. We see you, we recognize you. And what happened? The real war is not Americans versus Muslims. The real war is against the machine. It's the people versus the machine. The profits out of fear. The same powers that bomb countries, destroy economies, and set up the stage of chaos, then later open the door for refugees to then say later, look at these angry immigrants. They're invading us. They rob people's house, break into it, steal the goods, and walk away. And then you get surprised when they knock back at your door, barefooted, shaking. And you're like, wow, why are you here? You're the problem. Brainwash people. See that. People who fall for it. They don't see the weapons deals. They don't see the rich getting richer. They don't see the think tank. Their meetings in those quiet rooms. They just see a headline that says, be afraid. Be afraid of these people. False flags and fear do not justify war. They just justify who you're allowed to hate It's a weapon. Now it would be easy for me to say, oh yeah, it's the lobby groups, the warmongers, politicians. It's all the elites. But I'll be a hypocrite. And my people need tough love. Arabs and Muslims. They piss me off so much. But I truly love them. And I'm very, very angry at them. When Gaza burns, when Yemen starves, when Iraq and Syria are shattered, when Sudan was massacred and divided. We repost, we cry. Aw. Look how they're treating us. It's going to unfold. Truth will unfold itself. Remember that story I said about the 3 boats God sent to this drowning man? I feel like it's the same, can be applied to the Arabs. You're in that opportunity. You're in that nation that gives you the right. Implement your rights. A lot of these events happen, and when it's time for them to show up, they never show up. I'm not going to say all. There's people that do show up. But the majority of them don't. They live comfortable lives. They don't want to be uncomfortable. I remember I did free Gaza decals, to kind of bring awareness of the whole issue and what's going on in the Middle East. To get people questioning, to get an understanding of what's happening in that side of the world. But in real life, most people didn't come. I had people from different states reach out to me, but not people from my own borough or city, I would say. I guess they have that mentality, stay silent. They're scared. The walls have ears. I get it. The grandparents were traumatized. A lot of the countries on that side of the world, if anybody ever speaks out, they can get hurt or even disappear. But if we carry that same fear here, fear will win. And it kind of did. I want to stir up the pot a little bit. And not because I hate us. I do have faith in my people that they can combine the pain and courage and stop being silent. False flags is about division. And builders have to point out the connection. You know that term when they say history repeats itself. History has everything that we need. History is full of these moments that they don't talk about enough. A story that sticks out for me got people like Pedro El Pizzo Compos, who was inspired by the Irish struggle. Shout out to the Irish people. Love the Irish. And he was involved in their politics as if he was a part of it. But it's two nations who were far away from each other, but they were both kind of colonized. But they shared the same pain and struggle. Or, for example, Umar ibn al-Khattab in Islamic religion, when he first entered Jerusalem, and he ruled over Jerusalem, he didn't divide and kick people out and erase people from the land. He actually brought equality to Christians and Jews that lived in the Holy Land. He actually commanded his troops to go look around for tribes that fled to come back and live on equal grounds with Christians and Muslims, because they had rights to that Holy Land as well. Even in that movie, Kingdom of Heaven, there was a scene with Salah ad-Din when he entered the church after he defeated the Crusaders. He got into the church and there was like a cross that was knocked on the floor. And he picked it up and adjusted it and fixed it and put it on the table, showing his respect to the Christian religion. Even in movies, they can't lie about the history. And the reason they can't lie about these history moments is because these moments are significant because they worked when people implemented these tactics. Not tactics, sorry. I meant to say when people implement these positive actions, it brings understanding and humanity together. And even in Yemen, we had tribes of Jews that lived there for thousands of years. And we lived with each other like brethren. No judgment, no nothing. They've been there for thousands of years. Even when Israel demanded them to come over to Israel, to create the state of Israel, a lot of them refused. They're like, nah, we're home. We don't need to. We're pretty good here. We don't need to go over there. We're comfortable here. But the stigma of it is that Muslims and Jews hate each other. Not really. I don't think Islam hates anybody. People hate each other. I actually, during Ramadan, my previous location, my old shop, I used to have my Jewish neighbor who used to own like a supermarket next to me, and he used to bring me actually fruits or dates and watermelon for me to break my fast, and he'll come check on me, which was like beautiful to me, and how am I supposed to hate this person? And I've experienced the love that my own people didn't even show me. You don't hate a whole group because of one flaw. There's a saying in Arabic that says there's a bathroom in every house. And although it sounds like I am criticizing Zionism or labeling it as a bathroom, it might have started as a noble cause, but it became something completely different after. Sometimes people get obsessed with achieving a goal that they're willing to do anything and everything to achieve it. So when I criticize AIPAC, I'm not talking about your Jewish neighbor or your Jewish classmate or your Jewish friend. I'm talking about the machine that feeds off fear. And it doesn't really care about the color of your passport, as long as it makes the profits go up. You know what I've discovered recently? I've discovered something that exceeds the speed of light. And that thing is how fast we slap labels on people. You criticize the government, you're anti-Semitic. You criticize a Muslim leader, you're Islamophobic. You criticize America, you hate this country, move somewhere else. If somebody calls you an anti-Semite, just call them an anti-Goyim. Because even Goyims have rights. And if somebody calls you an Islamophobe, I don't think such a term exists in Islam. It doesn't really matter. Islam is focused. It moves forward. Should have seen things they did to our prophet. Research is good to know. Solid man. Peace be upon him. And if they tell you that you shouldn't criticize America, you say, it's my freedom of speech. It's that simple. I personally think if you can't get criticized, that does not mean that you're holy. It means that you're dangerous. My goal is not to make you hate, any religion like Islam, Christianity, Judaism, Hinduism, or whatever the case might be. Or any political party, left, right, up, down, left, center, back flipping, front flipping, it's a whole bunch of them now. My goal is to make you hate nonsense and call it out. And to make you pretty much like allergic to false narratives. You have a brain, sit down and think about it. Especially the narratives that label fear as their main page, or like what they put up front. I think they do it just to shut your brain off. It's fight or flight. I guess fight is fight, and fear is what causes the flight. Even in Staten Island, I'm from Staten Island. It's not, and I really don't think Staten Island is racist, although a lot of people would disagree with me. But they listen to all these news outlets that display fear, and they play what the machine wants, and they're scared. Recently the whole vote, I guess, for Mamdani, Staten Island voted pretty much for Cuomo, because they were scared of Islam. And growing up here, like, there's always been that fear of Muslims, especially on Staten Island. But when they get to know you, they are very welcoming people, surprisingly. Italians have a lot of similar cultures as, Arabs and Muslims. You'll be surprised. I remember this gentleman that I used to, he was an excellent client. He's a good friend. I would consider him a good friend. Still to today. Because it wasn't him. So I remember, like, we used to, like, discuss about religion and stuff like that. And one thing you got to know about Italians is that they're raw. They don't care. They'll say anything that's in their head. I rather, believe it or not, and that's the thing that I like, express yourself. And let's come to an understanding. So this guy used to express himself and what he thought about Islam and perspectives and this and that. So, like, I educated regarding the issue. So through those, talks and, we became very close, educated about the whole thing. I remember that I was like, listen, I'm not here to convert you to Islam or whatever the case might be. I can give you a Quran, you can read it for yourself, and you can return it, you can keep it, whatever the case might be. And the guy was very, you don't understand, respectful. Even when I handed him the Quran, he's like, where do I put it? And I'm like, it's okay, just like put it somewhere high and just respect it. Like I would. And he's like, if I give you a Bible, I'm like, yeah, give me a Bible. I'll treat it the same. I'll respect it. And I remember, like, this is right before October 7th happened, the war in Gaza. As soon as that happened, I came to work that day, opened my mailbox to get, take out my mail. And guess what I see in the mailbox? the Quran. This guy got scared. He got terrified. He thought it was something like, But give it a little more time, and the news and the outlet and the exposures that happened, the narrative changed to what it truly was. And people were like, oh. So I remember he came by and he's like, hey, I was like, yeah, don't worry about it. Don't even say nothing. It's fine. I understood right away. He's like, but I just feel like I should apologize. Like, I was like, no, you're good. Let's move forward from this point. I'm not mad at you or anything. I know how this machine works. He's like, machine? Then we got into the whole concept. And he's like, yeah, I even tried to be respectful, and I put it in a mailbox and I, wrapped it up. And I'm like, I see. I know. Thank you for that as well. He's like, but I was like, stop. Don't explain. We'll move forward from here. Let's finish our talks. I don't think humanity is stupid or unkind. I just feel like they're distracted. They stack issues like, 9/11, Afghanistan, Arab Spring, Yemen, Gaza, Ukraine, COVID, like artificial intelligence. It's just like a lot of these things come into play, and they shove it in your face, a lot of these elements. I feel like every time we catch a breath, they hit us with something else. But that's a strategy. They make a problem seem so big, as big as a mountain. And they make you feel like you're a little ant at the bottom. Meanwhile, it's all a facade. But false flags, and pretty much the machine, is all just a cover. And then when you peel off the cover, the issue's still serious. And there's still a problem there. But it's not as untouchable or majestic or monstrous as they make it seem as it is. So that mountain just turned out to be a hell. A hell that, if humanity really works together, can climb over. Or walk over. Things can get complicated for humans. So the best escape for them is kind of like an animalistic mode. They just snack, sleep, rest, pay bills, and continue the next cycle the next day. But you're not a dumb animal. You're a builder. The smartest species on the planet. Even when... And I feel bad for those that don't have it, but even when all these complex ideas and these feelings get to us, we still choose compassion overall. And like I said, I feel bad for those who don't. I don't really consider them humans anyway. You know what comes after all these false flags? A common truth, really. 9/11 was horrific. A lot of things were said about 9/11 that were evil. Israel does exist. And the Palestinians absolutely deserve freedom. America's done beautiful things. And America's done terrible things. All these are truths. As well as false flags, they do manipulate fear. False flags manipulate fear. And you know who's scared? You, pussy. And if you don't like that sentence, and you don't think kids under rubble, and people starving, in wars and people dying, and kids can't afford a book, and you're okay with the elites controlling every single step of your life, then you got your priorities upside down. So, what do we do with all this? I'm not asking you to solve the Gaza issue. If you look at the Gazans, they're truly inspirational. They gave humanity a reboot and developed ambition in everybody, as well as Congress. Can you fix it? I don't know. You are American, right? And you know how simple it is to end a war. It's to stop it. It's that simple. I'll ask you to do 3 simple things that would take you far. Don't comply that you live in a bubble. And stop doom scrolling. And lift your head. And next time you're overwhelmed with these fears and these feelings and what's going on in the world, set it aside for a second. Turn around to the real world. Look at your family, your neighbors, people around you, humanity. And remind yourself what's real and what's not. Your nervous system is not designed to really hold a lot of the world's pain. That's why it chooses to avoid it. And the second thing, question the big fear strategy that they use on you. Anytime they tell you to suddenly hate a group or religion or culture or sit there and ask yourself, how can it benefit me and how can it benefit the people requesting it? If the answer is people with power and money, then maybe you shouldn't drink everything they pour for you. And the third thing, use your voice. The one voice you have, use it. You're not a drop in the ocean. You're a full ocean squeezed into that single drop. And trust me on that. One of my favorite lines from a movie was from Braveheart. And that line was, people don't follow titles. People follow courage. I'm not a politician. I'm not a scholar. I don't have a fancy title that matters on paper. But maybe if I show a little bit of courage, I'll wake up a little bit of courage in you. And that's the thing about courage. When you start to show courage, it's contagious. The people around you starts to feel it as well. And they start to get courage too. And it starts to spread. It's really courage that defeats false flags. Not even just recently woke up to some news about Yemen being on the list again of Muslim countries that are banned. That's the stupidest shit ever. What did it do the last time? I think you're being played as Americans. As a Yemeni Muslim American, I did grow up on the liberty, freedom, and pursuit of happiness. And it hurts. And it hurts you too, I know as well. Do something about it. I'll tell you one thing though to the elites, from me personally. They can take the Muslims out of America, but they can never take the America out of the Muslims, if those beliefs are still in them. You can write all the bans you want. My head always felt like a bad neighborhood. I always felt like I was restricted and fear held me back. I was scared to walk alone. My fellow Americans, I love you. I love my Muslims. I love my Christians, my Jews, my Hindus. The one up, down, left, right. Never forget that we're one. Nobody's special than the other one. We're all the same. My fight is not against you. My fight is against the shadows. The shadows that present themselves in the light as part of being the light. Perfect hybrids to live amongst us and are all just deceiving liars. They're all just a part of darkness. I'm Bazzi, and this is The False Flag, Episode 8.